This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the CEO of Hannan Metals, the very busy Mr. Michael Hudson. Mike, you have a lot going on. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Gerardo. I do feel busy, but it's nice to be busy, and I'm doing what I love.
Well, and you're doing it well. The press release today, I think, speaks to that. Let me read the headline, and then I'll let you provide the context. Hannan discovers first high-grade copper-silver outcrops over 2.5 kilometer strike at Tabalosos in Peru. Congratulations. Channel samples included 2 meters at 4.9% copper and 62 grams per ton silver. Every time you and I speak, I always caution that it's early stage, but you're finding copper and now silver all over the place. You have to be happy, and I imagine your JV partner, Jogmec, has to be happy as well.
Well, absolutely. I can speak for myself in isolation. Without a doubt, these were stunning results, really. I mean, when we started uncovering some of these outcrops back in January, and this is when these discoveries were made, and some of the photos started coming back from the field of, faces of black shiny chalcocite, which is a copper sulfide mineral, and these green areas, and they were finding multiple zones over long strike extents. That was my moment of excitement, and now I can share that joy with hard numbers. Now the assays are back from the lab, and these are the first discoveries from Tabalosos in outcrop. We had some very high grade boulders that sort of were at the similar tenor of what we see in these outcropping areas. So now it's starting to really take shape. It's over 2.5 kilometers. I think we've now got of this high grade copper, not completely channel sampled. And I suppose one other thing to really point out, that this is high jungle area. It's got soils moving, pretty much constantly. There's a very active environment with lots of rain, and it's hard to find outcrops, and the team has done bloody well. We talk about partially and fully sampled because we're not getting the full lengths of these mineralized, or full widths, I should say, of these mineralized zones. We're only just getting little windows, and then they're covered by the soil too thick that we just can't dig and get down with the hand sampling methods and shovels that we're using at the moment. So early-ish days, but bloody impressive.
The outcrop discoveries were made in 2 separate zones, correct?
They certainly were. They were made, over a combined strike extent of 2.5 kilometers. But the 2 zones, one is Zona Sur, which means South Zone, and Zona Este. So we're not being that original, which means Zona East Zone. But they are covered by areas in between. We've got boulders in between that are shedding off some other areas that we haven't found, obviously, yet in between. But the next stage is the areas that we found consistently are over up to 0.5 kilometer strike. So they're not small in outcrop that we found, right? We found multiple zones over up to half a kilometer at Zona Sur itself. But the next stage is to run systematic soil sampling over the length of this prospective horizon that wraps around a salt dome. So salt is the magic that makes these systems work. It's the salt has dissolved the copper at depth, brought it into these rocks, and the copper has dropped salty fluids where there's a change in what we say redox conditions, or going from oxidized rocks to reduced rocks where there's less oxygen, and the copper just goes bang and settles out. And to map that horizon, we really need to run these soils. Then we'll start to see the continuity. We'll be able to infill with more channels and map these things and get an idea of their true widths and grades, even more than we have at the moment. And then we'll move to drilling. And we're starting the earlier stages of drill permitting in this area now. We've got a lot of work to do, but we're starting the cadastral or the landholder work. Now that we know where the copper is, we're starting to determine who are the landowners, and we're talking with a number of them, but we need to confirm them legally, and then we'll start doing archaeological work and environmental work that will all fill into the drill permits that will take place late this year or next year. You know, the drill permitting in Peru is not fast, so nobody should have high expectations we're going to drill this tomorrow, but it's all a work in progress.
You've now, at least at Tabalosos, identified 2 mineralized target styles. You mentioned a stratabound position in the upper levels of the Sarayaquillo formation, and then you mentioned a structurally controlled sandstone hosted copper-silver target. The widths and the lengths are just, I think it's hard for the average person, even myself, and I do this all day, every day, to conceptualize. I mean, the stratabound Sarayaquillo formation, you talk about being correlated over a 30-kilometer long trend and over 5 kilometers in width. You then talk about the structurally controlled sandstone hosted copper silver target. And that area is 7 kilometers long and up to 5 kilometers wide in Tabalosos. How are you prioritizing the work in the field when you're there?
Yeah, and that's just Tabalosos, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
20 kilometers of strike of this system that extends down to Sacanche, so which is 80 kilometers south of Tabalosos, where we're finding exactly the same styles of mineralization, both in the Sarayaquillo and the Cushabatay formations. So obviously the thinner high grade Sarayaquillo is a very compelling target, but it will be long, and we need to find continuity to get up the tons and grade, which it looks like it does have, at this earlier stage. But the continuity question is the key question that we need to narrow down and de-risk at every point, and that's continuity at kilometres to hundreds of metres down to the metre by metre sort of scale. So we know it's there, and it's forming over very large areas, and we can start even now with these trenches that we've just taken. You can start to see the continuity at the sort of the hundreds of metre scale, and then the drilling will sort of answer the question at that scale and down. So prioritising was your question, though. We're also running some a regional stream sediment program, a BLEG approach basically, which is sampling the streams for anomalous metals and gold, included copper, silver, gold, and that will give us the anomalous catchment areas within where those streams have been sourcing their waters from, and then we can start to walk in and see these anomalous catchments, perhaps take more stream sediments into the smaller catchments and start to narrow down the areas. So I suppose that's one way of prioritizing. The first way was to look at all the satellite data and airborne imagery and target the geology. Secondly, this stream sediment. Thirdly is prospecting and what we're doing now, and then fourth is the soil samples and becoming a little more directed, and then fifth is the drilling. So that's the sort of way you narrow it down and prioritize the priority of the areas. The priority of the styles, they'll come out by that process. The thinner high grade Sarayaquillo is very compelling, but the thicker Cushabatay, you see where we're seeing gossans, lead zinc parts of the system that are the peripheral parts of these copper systems we see elsewhere in the world. We see these lead zinc gossans at least 50 to 80 meters wide in Sacanche specifically. So if you can find something that's host grade at the right grade at those sort of widths, obviously that's the fast track rather than chasing something that's thinner and high grade. But they're both compelling target styles. They both form in other parts of the world, in and around these systems, and we just got to do the work now in that order as I just explained.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Mr. Hudson continues to make discovery after discovery. As a very happy and biased Hannan shareholder, excellent job, Mike. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, watch this space. This is, I suppose we touched it at the start, but this is a fully funded project here in San Martin with Tabalosos, Sacanche, and the Gera projects, fully funded by JOGMEC, a wonderful partner, essentially the Japanese government, their arm that is looking for metal supply for their industry. They're going to put in $8 million US over a 4-year period. The first year is just coming to an end. And then they can fund this project up to $35 million US by taking it through to feasibility. So the Hannan shareholders in this respect get full exposure to this project. They'll own 25% of it if JOGMEC go all the way to that $35 million spend without having to dilute the company a cent.
And then there's the other half of the company, right? You want to speak to that just to remind everyone?
Yes, and then the JOGMEC deal is only a third of our ground position in Peru. We're a 10%, a top 10 holder in Peru in terms of land holding, which is, I think the peers around us are some of the biggest companies in the world, and we're this little minnow that holds just as much ground as Rio Tinto or Barrick, and so the JOGMEC deal, which is fully funded, is only 1/3 of our ground holding in Peru. 2/3 is in our own right, and we're exploring that to give shareholders full exposure to the upside of a new discovery.
A lot of upside. I suspect that by year end, you will be trading in dollars, not cents. Again, great work. Thanks again for your time, Mike.
Thanks, Gerardo.